To understand cloud computing, you need to understand the broader IT industry. And the fundamental premise that I laid out is that the IT industry is like any other industry. The history of economics has been one, at least for the last 200 years, one of industrialization and moving towards standardization, towards commoditization, which ultimately leads to more repeatable processes. But most importantly, it allows organizations, businesses, to focus less on actual procurement of, in this case, technology, and instead on their business. So delivering business value, because most organizations are not experts at procuring technology. In the same way that 100 years ago, organizations, let's say factories or mills or farms, weren't experts at provisioning electricity. So over time, electricity providers emerge, and we simply access that service. More recently was telecommunications, the same thing. We're not, as organizations, experts at procuring or provisioning routers and switches and all of the core infrastructure for telecommunications. We just want to turn on our phone and get a dial tone and leverage that service. IT is moving in the same direction. Fundamentally, organizations shouldn't have to own, deploy, provision, manage boxes if they don't want to. They need to have the choice. They may want to in some instances. That's fine. But the point is that they don't have to. And that's the direction that IT is moving. And that's fundamentally what cloud computing is all about. It's giving people the choice to either own their infrastructure if they so choose. And there's good instances where they may choose to. But more importantly, if they choose not to. The role will become more strategic. Ultimately, everything we're talking about here boils down to a question of sourcing. CIOs, to be valuable and to add more value to their organizations and improve their own career capabilities, need to think in terms of enabling business value. Now, that may come through owning, controlling, and managing their own data center. It may come from sourcing external services from a public cloud, or it may, and most likely, will be some combination of those. The question, though, isn't one of managing technology. It's in sourcing services that the business requires. The technology approach to doing that will vary. Successful CIOs will look at cloud as just another sourcing option. They won't see it as the solution to all their problems, nor will they see it necessarily as a threat to their existing power structure or role or value, because their value is in the actual sourcing. The technology is just a means to the end. Well, actually, our estimate right now for growth, I will relate it to the SaaS market, software as a service, because the fact is, particularly in India, the vast majority, so in excess of 90% of the overall cloud market is the SaaS market. The markets for platform and infrastructure are just beginning right now. So the spending is overwhelmingly around software as a service. So in that market, we're projecting for the next 4 years a compound annual growth rate of 36%. That is the highest in Asia Pacific. So India is growing and will continue to grow rapidly. And in fact, it's one of those instances where the supply of those services will create even more demand, because as services become available, people start to consume them, they'll get validated. So I would expect to see growth rates actually accelerate for at least the next 3, 4, 6 quarters. It's a good question. It's actually mixed. It really depends far more on the types of workloads they have or the types of business requirements that they have. Certainly what we can say is for larger enterprises, because they have existing investments in the data center, there's a much greater focus around private cloud enablement and making their internal IT operations act as a service provider to their business. With SMBs, with smaller companies, there's a natural focus and interest towards public cloud services because they lack the existing investments. And the logical argument is that it maybe doesn't make sense for them to invest in the technology. They can skip that whole cycle and go straight to a public type offering.